shock in the Kremlin. A coup? Kirill Dmitriev has challenged Lavrov. Putin has been wrapped up in the intrigue of the century. Who could have thought that the Kremlin's chief negotiator would become a thorn in the side of the foreign minister? Why did a conflict erupt between them? Could Dmitriev's ambitions make him one of the real rulers of Russia? All the behind-the-scenes intrigues and scandals are in our story.
The one who is causing problems for the Kremlin's old guard.
On President Putin's orders. I spent 2 days in the United States, was received positively, and had a very frank conversation.
The head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, Kirill Dmitriev, has long been nicknamed Putin's negotiator with the US. He is also called one of the architects of those very 28 points of Trump's peace plan. After Trump's new term, Dmitriev's importance to the Kremlin increased sharply, and now he has become one of the key participants in Russian-American contacts and negotiations on resolving the war in Ukraine.
In fact, there is a decent list of things, a list of steps that need to happen for us to truly start interacting better.
As of today, Dmitriev is essentially serving as one of the Kremlin's key diplomatic channels. For Putin, he has become a very close person. It has repeatedly come up that Dmitriev became close to the dictator thanks to family ties with the head of the Kremlin. After all, Dmitriev's wife is a close friend of Putin's daughter, Ekaterina Tikhonova. But it's not just about nepotism.
He is someone who is close to Putin due to certain circumstances. Some kind of family connections, because we remember those stories about wives and daughters. And how did he even get into this circle in the first place? On the other hand, it's important to understand that he studied abroad and had established quite close relationships with representatives of the American economic elite, first and foremost.
Good contacts with Steve Witkoff also worked in his favor. And now, it would seem a man who was once advantageous for the Kremlin has become a thorn in the side of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, namely for Sergey Lavrov. After all, lately, a real battle has begun for the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Lavrov is a champion of traditional diplomacy.
We are, in principle, polite people, and we try to maintain this trait, this quality of ours.
Dmitriev, a representative of new approaches that include not only diplomatic, but also business relations. The media has repeatedly reported on Putin's dissatisfaction with the previously failed negotiations with the Americans. Lavrov was blamed for this. After that, Lavrov virtually disappeared from the public eye. But it was Dmitriev who put relations between the US and Russia on a new track.
So this gentleman, Kirill Dmitriev, he helped organize everything, helped in fact to establish some kind of relationship between our countries. And there's one more thing. He's from Ukraine, which means basically, in Putin's view, he's the right kind of Russian who denies the existence of Ukraine as an independent country. And accordingly, for Putin, this is probably also an important point.
Competition has increased, and as Russian media reports, Dmitriev decided to advance his career further. He even offered Putin his resignation. Lavrova. According to Kirill Dmitriev, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is already outdated and ineffective. Traditional diplomacy is archaic. Therefore, it is time for one of Russia's key diplomats to retire.
This is about the future, because he was talking a bit more about the past.
Lavrov's team is aware of this. That's why they're preparing to put compromising material on Dmitriev on Putin's desk.
Dmitriev goes to America and tells all sorts of things there. It's very unfortunate that he's doing this. We've gathered some information on him. We'll soon pass it on to Vladimir Vladimirovich. After that, Dmitriev should end up under investigation. At the very least, he should no longer be allowed to leave Russia. I'm saying this directly so that Dmitriev doesn't get any bolder. Diplomacy is inappropriate in his case, said a source close to Lavrov.
Competition has turned into conflict, and this conflict between Lavrov and Dmitriev has been going on for almost a year now. According to journalists, Patrushev also had questions about the new negotiator. He stated that Dmitriev is overstepping his bounds when he makes promises about cooperation between Moscow and Washington, especially in the Arctic region.
Nikolai Platonovich had a conversation with the president. He noted that Dmitriev is certainly a talented negotiator, but he has clearly overstepped his authority.
The relationship between the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry and Putin's special envoy has become extremely tense. But according to experts, Dmitriev is not interested in Lavrov's position.
I don't think Dmitriev is aiming for the role of foreign minister at all. He has a somewhat different function, and it should be understood that in the power structure Putin has built, formal positions certainly play a certain role, but it is the informal connections that are the main key factor. And in terms of informal connections, Dmitriev has probably even surpassed Lavrov by now, at least in some respects.
And according to experts, it's unlikely that anyone will remove Lavrov, and Putin values people who have worked with him for years. But would anyone actually dare to remove Putin himself? Russian journalists, citing their own sources, have shared a very interesting detail. Dmitriev is very ambitious and not entirely honest with Putin.
Sergei Viktorovich believes that Dmitriev is not completely honest with the president and is playing his own game with the Americans, hoping in the future for a higher position, the source said. He did not specify whether this referred to the post of Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, or even President.
The latest negotiations in Moscow have shown just how influential Kirill Dmitriev is right now in the negotiation process with the Americans. And this is a very important part in the history of Russian diplomacy. But whether Dmitriev's ambitions will take him all the way to the presidency remains to be seen. The question is still open because for now he is in a standoff with Sergey Lavrov, whom Dmitriev has clearly sidelined with his new ideas.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Shock and impeachment for Trump. The US is on the brink of revolt. A shocking divide is brewing in America. Polls are sounding the alarm. Americans are backing Ukraine. The Senate is also unhappy with the president's controversial decisions. Even Secretary of State Marco Rubio is trying to push a pro-Ukrainian agenda and is putting pressure on Trump. Watch all the explosive details right now.
Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Boston, mass protests took place in dozens of U.S. cities against the peace plan proposed by Washington, which, according to participants, effectively legitimizes Russian aggression and forces Ukraine to accept Moscow's terms. The American political establishment, which opposes Trump's policies, also joined the mass protests. For example, in Chicago, Representative Michael Quigley took part in the protests.
When authoritarian regimes try to erase an entire people, the world has no right to remain silent. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past. And we cannot allow Trump to force Ukraine to accept a false peace dictated by Moscow.
Americans are very dissatisfied with Trump's policy toward Ukraine. If the 47th President of the United States began his second term in office with the support of 47% of the population, then due to the peace agreement, or more precisely, the de facto capitulation of Ukraine, which the White House is trying to force Zelensky to sign, Trump's approval rating has dropped to a historic low. It's not just ordinary Americans who are dissatisfied with the peace plan. The agreement has sparked significant resistance in the Senate from both Republicans and Democrats.
Putin has spent the entire year trying to make President Trump look like a fool. If administration officials are more concerned with appeasing Putin than achieving real peace, then the president should find new advisors.
This capitulation agreement is unacceptable for America, for Europe, or for Ukraine. It was written by Putin and benefits only him.
Trump constantly threatens that the US will withdraw from the negotiations if a peace agreement is not signed in the near future. But in reality, he cannot do this at least until the US midterm elections for the House of Representatives and the Senate in November 2026. Because his approval rating is falling and his support is declining, which means Trump won't dare to anger voters even more.
He has already damaged his relationship with part of his own audience, the so-called MAGA movement leaders, over the Epstein Files case and the scandal surrounding their publication. Accordingly, if he now announces that he is completely washing his hands of Ukraine and forgetting about it, he will ruin his relationship with conservative Republicans, traditional conservative Republicans, who, although they remain silent, still have quite a significant influence within his own party.
Trump wants peace agreements and wants all the glory to go to him. And anything that doesn't bring him personal benefit doesn't interest the president. In turn, Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated in a recent interview that he holds a pro-Ukrainian position in the negotiations and assured that Ukraine has good prospects and that a peace agreement will not be signed without security guarantees.
Theoretically, if everything is done right, in 10 years, Ukraine's GDP could surpass Russia's GDP. The following things are needed to stop the war, to ensure that they are never invaded or attacked again, to protect Ukraine's long-term sovereignty and independence so that it does not become a puppet state. They are truly and genuinely independent and sovereign nations, allowing their economy not just to fully recover, but to truly thrive and become a remarkable story of sustained prosperity.
Ordinary Americans are taking to the streets in protest, and senators and congressmen are already openly voicing their disagreement with a peace deal. Even Trump's closest circle is against making concessions to Moscow. Meanwhile, the 47th president speaks about the need to hold elections in Ukraine, but if he doesn't listen to those around him, he himself may not survive to the end of his presidential term in the United States.
Europe is fighting for Ukraine. Macron shouts that the frozen assets of the Kremlin are only for Kyiv. The West is pressuring Trump not to disrupt peace talks and to support Zelensky. And in Russia, it's a catastrophe. Sanctions are destroying the economy. The Kremlin is trembling under the blow. To find out what happens next, watch the report.
Europe continues to fight for Ukraine. Today in Brussels, a decision is being made that just a year ago seemed impossible. The European Union has found a legal loophole that allows it to block Russian assets without the unanimous consent of all member states.
The published text is a complex legal document that tries to resolve two contradictions: to provide money to Ukraine without direct costs to member states, and to make decisions without the unanimity that is currently required. The result is complicated, but it might work.
Essentially, EU countries are getting themselves out of a trap they set for themselves at the very start of the full-scale war. All these years, the fate of the frozen Russian assets depended on the moods of one or two countries that were ready to block any decision. Now, however, Brussels is using a mechanism designed for cases of economic shocks. And Russia's war against Ukraine has been officially recognized as just such a shock. Meanwhile, in European capitals, preparations are already underway for a move that could become the biggest financial blow to Russia during the entire rule of the bunker dweller. The European Commission has proposed allocating 210 billion euros in support to Ukraine by 2027. And a significant portion of these funds is supposed to come specifically from the frozen Russian assets. 185 billion are held in the Belgian depository Euroclear, and about another 25 billion are in accounts in other EU countries.
Germany will provide 25% of the support, which is the largest share among all countries.
This is especially important now as it is Belgium, the country where Euroclear is located, that in recent months has been slowing down the process, fearing legal consequences and risks to its own financial system.
Belgium is more concerned than anyone else that Russia might later try to reclaim these assets through the courts, and in that case, Belgium would need the support of other countries. That's it. And that's why all the European countries that support Merz's idea are also trying to convince Belgium. I think that in the end this will succeed.
And while the fate of Russian assets is being decided in Brussels, European leaders are fighting on another front, the diplomatic one. The key figures here remain the Chancellor of Germany, the President of France, and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It is they, together with the Ukrainian government, who continue to defend Kyiv's interests before the United States.
We all support Ukraine, and we all support peace and peaceful negotiations to achieve a sustainable, lasting peace. And I believe that much is now in our hands. Funding, the quality of equipment and training for the Ukrainian army, the fact that Ukraine is resisting in this war, as well as the fact that the Russian economy is beginning to suffer, especially after our latest sanctions and those of the United States. And now, as it seems to me, the main issue is bringing our common positions closer together, Europeans, Ukrainians, and the United States, in order to conclude these peace negotiations and once again strengthen trust under the best possible conditions for Ukraine, for Europeans, and for our collective security.
But let's return to the sanctions and their consequences for Russia. Analysts from The Insider have found that the sanctions are literally breaking the production chains of Russian weaponry. The country is unable to fully carry out complex chemical processing. Access to the necessary reagents is closed off. The import of strategic chemicals has dropped. All of this has hit rocket fuel production especially hard, a critical sector without which modern weaponry is impossible.
For the first time, probably since the start of the full-scale war, there was a recorded decrease in weapons production in Russia in the month of September. Now, the problems that were talked about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, are already hitting Russia's military-industrial complex.
But the effect of the sanctions could be even stronger. Thus, the GUR is calling for restrictions to be imposed on the entire production chain. Because right now, 13 out of 49 Russian companies involved in the creation of missiles like the Iskander-M are still not under sanctions.